The Shenzhou 19 crew set to go to space tomorrow morning. The chief executive says there will be at least 20 more drills before the new Kai-Tak Sports Park officially opens. And in the U.S., Trump appeals to religious voters while the Democrats step up attack on the Republican candidate over a comedian's remarks. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The Shenzhou 19 cruise spaceship mission will be launched in the early hours of Wednesday from the mainland's Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The mission will be conducted by 3 astronauts, including the country's only female space flight engineer. The Mu Sang-ai reports.
The 3 astronauts who will carry out the Shenzhou 19 crewed spaceship mission are Cai Yujie, Shong Lingdong, and Wang Haozhe. The commander of the current mission, Cai, completed the Shenzhou 14 space mission in 2022. His 2 colleagues, Song and Wang, were born in the 1990s. Wang is also China's only female spaceflight engineer and will become the 3rd woman to join a crewed spaceflight mission.
We have worked together for the preparation for more than 1 year, and we have maintained the best status. We can work like one single person. Our 2 colleagues, they are very confident and brave, and they are optimistic, and they are very responsible person for the mission. Together with them, I also feel so much younger.
The trio will spend 6 months at the Tiangong space station, where they will conduct 86 studies and experiments related to space science. Meanwhile, in a separate press conference, the China Manned Space Agency provided an update on the 2 payload specialists who came from Hong Kong and Macau.
They were admitted to the team on August 8th. Living and training with other astronauts, they have taken customized courses with formulated recipes scientifically according to their dietary. They are full of enthusiasm for training with a good physical and mental state.
While authorities have not revealed the name of the Hong Kong payload specialist, sources say she is 30-year-old Lai Ga-ying, who was previously a female police chief inspector. Mims 9, TVB News.
Hong Kong's property prices have been falling for 5 consecutive months, and there are concerns about the impact of increasing the city's land supply. Chief Executive John Lee said it is necessary to create more land to guarantee the government is in control of land issues. Samantha Lee reports.
Property transactions have been active recently, but according to the latest Rating and Valuation Department figures, private residential property prices in September were down 1.6% month-on-month and 12.5% year-on-year. Former Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying earlier commented that the increase in land supply might lead to issues such as negative equity. Speaking before the Executive Council meeting today, Chief Executive John Lee said, according to previous experience, when land creation was insufficient, property prices got out of control.
The
government's stance is that to enable healthy development of our market, the government should take the lead. Otherwise, land supply decisions will be made in the hands of people who have vested interest, and this is not desirable.
Speaking about the first test run at the new Kai-Tak Sports Park last Sunday, Lee said progressive drills will be held starting from December and then January next year.
I will envisage there will be at least 20 plus drills, and depending on the experiences we will gain through the drills, then we will design whether more will be necessary.
Lee added that he will set up a task force led by the Chief Secretary for Administration, Eric Chen, who will oversee the coordination and cooperation of all parties to ensure they have contingency plans. Samantha Lee, TVB News.
The U.S. Treasury Department has finalized a rule to restrict and monitor American investments in China in artificial intelligence, computer chips, and quantum computing. This is to implement an executive order issued by U.S. President Joe Biden in 2023. The new rule will take effect on the 2nd of January next year. The Outbound Investment Security Program aims to limit certain countries' access to American funds that may be used in developing their military, intelligence, and cyber capabilities, targeting specifically at the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong, and Macau. Authorities have set up the Office of Global Transactions to oversee the program. The final rule also stipulates that Americans and companies in the U.S. must notify the U.S. government of transactions involving technologies and products that may pose a national security threat. The Foreign Ministry in Beijing today protested against Washington's latest restrictions on investment in China. In Hong Kong, Chief Executive John Lee pointed to the perils of the move, saying it would undermine the interests of the American people and businesses.
With just 1 week to go before Election Day, presidential candidates of the two major parties are facing off not only in debates, but also here, a souvenir shop in New York City. Most of the campaign merchandise for Donald Trump and Kamala Harris are made in China. As both candidates have proposed raising tariffs on goods imported from China, will the business of this souvenir shop be affected?
Business people are very maneuverable. If I can't make money here, I'll figure out another way how to do it. And also, China doesn't want to lose American business. I'm sure they don't.
However, this wholesale store is not that optimistic. Almost all the goods here are from China. Its sales manager, Ms. Lin, said, as both China and the US are facing economic slowdowns, any increase in tariffs will be passed on to customers. She added that higher tariffs would push up the costs, adding pressure to them in running the business. According to the mainland's General Administration of Customs, America's trade deficit with China reached over $330 billion in 2023. Trump has proposed an across-the-board tariff of 60% on Chinese imports. Meanwhile, Harris has suggested targeted and strategic duties and is expected to retain the Biden administration's tariff hikes on electric vehicles, batteries, semiconductors, and medical products from China. A business association has warned that the American people and businesses will all suffer if another trade war breaks out. Tianwen Ray, executive director of the Better Chinatown Society, noted that products with Made in China labels are ubiquitous in America, fitting restaurants and 99-cents only stores. He added that major American companies like doing business with China, considering the quality and modest prices of Chinese goods. And he wondered whether people would willingly quit the products they have got used to when prices surge amid a trade war. Many in the business circle of America consider Harris's policy towards China as rather vague. Whoever becomes the new master of the White House, the China-US trade will get a surprise, though it will more likely be something that startles rather than delightful. Danny Zhou, TVB News.
Early voting is well underway across the United States as Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump appealed to religious voters in the southern swing state of Georgia Monday. Democrats, meanwhile, stepped up their attacks on Trump a day after a comedian opening a rally in New York City for the former president called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, a comment drawing wide condemnation. And more humiliation as a former White House chief of staff reported that when Trump was president, he said he wished he had German generals, a comment which the Harris campaign seized upon. Tracy Furness has more.
Donald Trump was speaking for just over an hour at Georgia Tech in Midtown Atlanta, where he dismissed claims that he or his supporters were comparable to the Nazis.
I'm not a Nazi. I'm the opposite of a Nazi. I don't know. It's true. My father always used to tell me, don't use the word, you don't ever use the word Nazi.
This came after Trump's Sunday Madison Square Garden rally, where crude and racist remarks were made by several speakers, which drew comparisons to a 1939 Nazi rally in the same venue. Meanwhile, people of Puerto Rico reacted Monday to some of those comments made at the rally by a comedian who said the U.S. territory was a floating island of garbage. This Puerto Rican resident said, I saw the video they were posting and it seemed to me to be a huge lack of respect. Puerto Ricans cannot vote in the general election despite being U.S. citizens, but they exert powerful influence with relatives on the mainland. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, Monday, Vice President Harris urged young voters to take the baton from generations of Americans who preserved freedom and back her over former President Trump.
Generations of Americans before us fought for freedom. And now the baton is in our hands. The baton is in our hands.
This as President Joe Biden cast his vote Monday, lining up with other voters in his home state of Delaware.
Joseph Biden now voting.
Biden was asked if this was bittersweet. He replied, "No, it's just sweet." When asked about the Trump rally this weekend, he had this to say.
It's simply embarrassing. Beneath any credit, but that's what we're getting used to. That's why this election is so important. You know, most of the presidential scholars I've spoken to talk about the single most consequential thing about a president's character. Character. And he puts that in question every time you open.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Gaza officials say an Israeli strike on a building in the north of the enclave killed at least 60 people, with more than half of them women and children. The dead and the injured from the strike in Beit Lahia were taken to hospital. These shots are from an earlier Israeli strike in the center of Gaza. The attack left 10 people dead and 20 others injured. In Lebanon, Hezbollah have named former Deputy Sheikh Naim Qassem as their new leader following Hassan Nasrallah's assassination by Israel in Beirut last month. Hezbollah's Shura Council elected Qassem as Secretary General and vowed to continue with Nasrallah's policies. And still ahead, Russia keeps up air attacks on Ukrainian cities as North Korean troops are said to have deployed to the Kursk region. And more details about the 3-runway system 10-kilometer international race to be held next month. Welcome back. North Korea's foreign minister is traveling to Russia for a visit as the U.S. say 10,000 North Korean troops will be deployed by Moscow in Ukraine. NATO Secretary General confirmed many are already there. David Garrett reports.
The war in Ukraine grinds on. Russia hit Kharkiv in the east near the border. Half a dozen people were injured in this residential apartment block. 2 deaths were reported elsewhere by officials of Ukraine's second largest city. A UNESCO-protected building, the Dezhprom, did not escape damage. This attack came after the Pentagon revealed that North Korea has sent about 10,000 troops to Russia to train and then fight in Ukraine. NATO says many are already in Russia's Kursk region, where Ukraine has a foothold.
The deployment of North Korean troops represents 1, a significant escalation in the DPRK's ongoing involvement in Russia's illegal war. 2, yet another breach of UN Security Council resolutions. And 3, a dangerous expansion of Russia's war.
Reuters says reliance on North Korean troops shows Russia's desperation. NATO Secretary General says 600,000 Russian soldiers have died in Ukraine in nearly 3 years. The move by Pyongyang to send troops like these will jolt relations in the region, with South Korea calling it illegal. The Russian foreign minister at a meeting in Kuwait says Seoul is wrong. Our treaty has been published. It does not violate international law, Sergei Lavrov says. It assumes assistance to each other. If one of the countries is attacked militarily, our position is honest and open. Meanwhile, North Korea's foreign minister is visiting Moscow as the two countries strengthen ties in a snub to Western countries. Ukraine's leader is bolstering international support too. Volodymyr Zelensky visiting NATO member Iceland and Prime Minister Bjarni Benediktsson, saying Ukraine is killing more Russians than ever and President Vladimir Putin doesn't care.
A lot of Russians are killed each day. The last my connection with the general was today morning, and yesterday, for example, Russians they lost only on the east direction they lost 800 people been killed. So they don't think about it. We have to think. That's why it's not simple. That's why we think first of all about people and then about the land.
The escalation in Ukraine was described as very dangerous by US President Joe Biden, with Washington saying it will not impose limits on the use of American weapons by Ukraine if North Korea joins Russia's war. David Garrett, TVB News.
Georgia's president has urged the West to support opposition protests against the official results of a weekend parliamentary election. The country's governing party was declared victorious amid allegations of voting irregularities and Russian meddling. Thousands of people protested outside Georgia's parliament in Tbilisi on Monday after the governing party declared victory in an election marked by reports of voting irregularities. EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called for a full investigation into the results of the election.
For so many years now, the people of Georgia have been striving and fighting for democracy. They have a right to know what happened this weekend, and they have a right to see that electoral irregularities are investigated swiftly, transparently, and independently. Georgians, like all Europeans, must be the masters of their own destiny.
In recent years, Saudi Arabia has been implementing domestic economic reforms. These reforms have enticed many foreign companies, including Hong Kong firms, to strengthen business ties with the Middle Eastern kingdom. The Hong Kong Trade Development Council noted the city's enterprises have an international outlook, which could help Saudi enterprises tap into new markets. The emerging fintech oasis of the Middle East. That's what Saudi Arabia is setting its sights on to transform itself into a digital finance hub. This fintech startup from Hong Kong has had an office in Saudi Arabia for more than a year. They provide anti-money laundering services with their self-developed vetting system. For example, it could be difficult to locate a sanctioned individual who is called Mohammed, as it is a very common name in the Middle East through most Western systems. Their Arabic language analytics system, however, can generate accurate results, and that has made it popular among Saudi companies. Runway Kin, the co-founder of the company, said fintech used in banks is usually Western-centric in terms of both their languages and interfaces. Their models, he said, allow more clients to conduct more comprehensive analysis. He added the Saudi business community generally thinks Hong Kong companies are reliable partners. With a close relationship between the mainland and Saudi Arabia, Hong Kong is able to leverage its role as a super connector. Another advantage, Hong Kong professionals' international outlook, Leung said. Alice Tseng, an economist from the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, said the city has become a super value adder in Saudi Arabia as well, helping the products tap the Asian market, especially the mainland Chinese market. She said Hong Kong can help provide marketing strategies or upgrades of products. The TDC said Hong Kong companies are flexible. To enter the Saudi market, the council recommended companies should seek a local partner and respect the local Islamic culture. The Hong Kong Association of Athletics affiliates today said runners for the 3-runway system 10-kilometer international race will not be allowed to bring items such as caps. The organization said the policy is to ensure the safety of athletes and the smooth operation of air traffic. The event will be held on November 17th. The Mosengai reports.
The 3-runway system 10 km international race will be held on the center runway, which will be in service by the end of this year. Authorities earlier said using the new runway for a race is symbolic and would be a unique experience for runners. Speaking to the media today, the organizer, the Hong Kong Association of Athletics Affiliates, or HKAAA, said they had received more than 30,000 applications for their 12,000 quota. Other event is on the center landing field. The north and south runways will continue to operate. Flights will land and take off there. To ensure a smooth operation of air traffic, the HKAAA said athletes are required to follow some specific rules. For instance, they are forbidden to bring certain personal items to the running track.
Usually, some runners wearing their caps and some power gel during the race. But this will be a danger if they drop it down in the runway. So we will prohibit it to bring this to the race in this event.
One also said athletes will undergo several security checks before starting their race, including one at the meeting point, Asia World Expo. The organizer added more than 1,000 staff members will help out on the day. Among the 12,000 runners, 4 will be world-ranked female athletes, with 3 coming from Kenya and 1 from Ethiopia.
While the HKAAA said they would like to invite more world-ranked athletes, despite their best efforts, many of them cannot make it because of their busy schedules. Memos 9, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.